Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about mediocrity. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, as a mediocre software engineer, does worrying about how other software engineers perceive your code help you be on your toes and do the best that you can? I suppose that's individual, but stress usually doesn't have a positive effect on the human condition, as far as I know. But I mean, I'm sure there's someone out there who, there are people who get, you know, satisfaction from all kinds of stuff. I mean, for I use watching scary movies to get, I don't know, excited is beyond me. But there are people who really like scary movies and other stuff. So I suppose it can happen, but on average, it doesn't really, at least what I've seen, it doesn't really help you to worry all that much. You're gonna do it regardless of if you think that, I don't think there's anybody who's ever considered themselves to be quote unquote mediocre who had the idea that, well, I'm fine with this because sure, there are people who are mediocre and who are fine with it, but there's no one I've known that has like this idea that, oh yeah, I give so few shits that when I show a piece of software to someone who you perceive as being good and so forth and so on, unless you have no pride whatsoever, yeah, you're probably gonna feel some anxiety about that. Because once again, like if you consider yourself to, if you even refer to yourself as mediocre, that by definition, at least in my opinion, means that you have someone around you who is better, and you should be fine with not being as good as someone else, but it's not the norm. The reality is that most software developers that I know that have this way of looking at themselves as being mediocre or so forth, like label themselves that way, either have low self-esteem and they're really, really good, or they just have low self-esteem. And on average, I find that neither one of them, because guys, I've worked with guys who are software developers who have been software developers for many, many, many years, and they are among the best there are, and they still think that they are mediocre or like so forth because they compare themselves to somebody else. Yet they can solve every single problem. They can build write really, really awesome code, etc., etc. But then you have the people who are not so strong in their coding skills, and they are aware of it, and they usually, as I said, they don't benefit from being stressed. It's like it happens. It's not something that they can do much about. They're gonna get stressed regardless. I can't really say how, what would be the comparison. If you're freaking out, if you're already stressed over the fact that you are not as good as the other software developers, how would you know how you would perform? If that makes sense, how would anybody be able to compare? Because what? So if you're a master software developer, does that mean that you're not on your toes and writing the best code that you can? So this is sort of where it gets weird, because either you are trying to do your best or you aren't. And it's very difficult. It's the same thing for a master software developer. Of course, a master software developer would also quote unquote benefit from being on their toes, but being stressed has nothing to do with it. Being afraid that other people are going to judge your code has no positive benefit for your, in my opinion, there is no positive benefit for like being on your toes or not. All it's going to do is it's going to stress you out. Being alert and trying to do the best you can do that without being scared of other people judging your software, because if you get to that point, then you have a much, much more severe problem. I've worked with guys like this, and the reality is, guys, that the good software developers, quote unquote, they don't care if you're stressing out or not over like if you're good or bad. Your code is going to be judged equally, because bad code is bad code. We have this rule that we try to follow, at least most of the developers that I know follow this, which is be nice to software developers but not to bad code. And so if you're a mediocre software developer stressing out it's not going to help you, because the code is going to be submitted regardless. So unless you are one of those people who can only do well when you have a knife against your throat, well, just try to relax. You know, that's easy to say, it's very hard to do. But the reality is that it doesn't matter if you're freaking out or not. If you don't have the talent, you are going to show it. I was trying to have that conversation with a guy who he was so self-conscious about his coding that he could not deal with a pull request. He literally could not. He could not allow someone to put a comment on his code when he created a pull request. And his reason was very simple, because that's a record of his flawed software, which means that other people will see that he has gotten a comment on his code. And I told him, like, that is the job, my friend. There is not a single software developer in the world who has ever gone through their career without getting a comment on their code. No one, not a single human being. So if you're stressing out over that, let's just say that after a few of those really weird ones, he got fired. So stressing out didn't really help him. He was on his toes all the time, but it didn't help because he lacked the necessary skills to do the job. And so this is one of those situations where you should take a page from actors or artists or anyone like that. So guys, it is, I know, a very nice and very safe life decision to say that I'm just going to sit in the crowd. I'm never going to put myself out there, which is the choice of a lot of people. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad choice. But software development is not one of those areas, because you have to produce software. Sooner or later, as a software developer, you have to submit that code for review. And you have to deal with it. It is the same thing as an actor who has to take an audition, or an artist has to present their art to someone at some point. And the quicker you get to a point where you get used to being judged for what you have done, the better for you, regardless of if you are mediocre or if you're really, really good. Because if you're too scared to make an attempt and put yourself out there, I can promise you one thing: going from mediocre to a master is never going to happen. And some people are, I suppose, born masters, but I can tell you this, guys, there was a time when the best of the best did not do so well with even the most basic algorithms that you can imagine. But they got to where they are today by just going through the process. And that is what I suggest that you do as well. So what I want you to take away from this, that no, I don't really think that it helps you. Yeah, how can worrying help you in any way? Unless, as I said, you are one of those people who for some reason cannot, I don't know, do well unless there's a knife to your throat. But you don't have to worry so much about that, because the equation usually goes like this. I'm going to help you. So if you are really, really good as a software developer and you're not on your toes, it does not matter, because you produce, or you're going to produce, on your baddest day, you're still going to produce something that can be useful to the company. And the average software company is not going to know whether or not that's your top-notch being on your toes or just something that's working. It does not matter, because you did something that was useful. If you are a shitty software developer, a mediocre software developer, it does not matter if you're stressing out and you're on your toes, because if the software is shit, you're still not going to be able to produce the thing that you need to produce, so you're still going to get fired. And you could, like, it doesn't matter which state of mind you are, either you are able to produce or you're not able to produce. And this is true for every single performance activity that you can possibly have. Therefore, you should not think so much about worry versus not worry. You should think about the end result. And then you should ask yourself, is worrying going to help the end result? In this scenario, probably not. So I know it's easy to say, but try to do well and get used to doing the best you can and living with the consequences. Have a great day.